Is this making your acid reflux or hiatal hernia symptoms worse? Let's first start with your symptoms. Do you have bloating, belching, constipation or diarrhea, brain fog, fatigue, anxiety or depression, trouble sleeping? If so, you may have a very treatable condition that is wreaking havoc throughout your body in addition to worsening your acid reflux and hiatal hernia symptoms. So what I'm talking about is a brand new study that showed a correlation between having acid reflux and having something called SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, that they are correlated. Now there's different types of SIBO, and you can do a lab test to see if it's hydrogen gas dominated or methane gas dominated. If you can't afford to do the test, you can't find somebody to help you get the test, the methane dominant, which is more associated with the acid reflux, is correlated with constipation. And then it's the hydrogen gas dominant that is more associated with diarrhea. So I'm not saying that's the exclusive instead of doing a test, but that can at least give you some direction if you're more methane dominant or hydrogen gas dominant. So they found that GERD, or acid reflux, is an independent risk factor for having SIBO. So why is this important? So if you're suffering from acid reflux, you have a hiatal hernia, and I sometimes say these conditions in one breath because the correlation between acid reflux and hiatal hernia is 70 to 100%. So when you have one, you tend to have the other at a very high percentage rate. So that's why I say that. So we know acid reflux, based on this study, is a risk factor it's highly correlated with people who then develop small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Why is that important? The symptoms I mentioned is one, and then in addition to that, you can also have skin conditions like rosacea. One of the things that the presence of these small intestinal bacteria produce is that they will get to your nutrition before you get to it, creating for you malnutrition. That's why B12 is one of the things that gets deficient. That's why more likely to have depression, anxiety. You're not absorbing your fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. Without good absorption of vitamin D, you're more likely to have bone disease like osteoporosis. So there's the correlation there. So it's very important that we find out if you have this, and also to treat it kind of comprehensively, holistically, because one is feeding into the other constantly. So what happens? First of all, it's good to know that bacteria should not be in your upper small intestine. It's supposed to be down in your colon, and you're supposed to have a nice healthy constituency or population of bacteria in your colon that number anywhere from 40 to 100 trillion bacteria. And of course you want the good guys, not the bad guys. But this migration of bacteria up into the small intestine, it's not supposed to be present. So you already know you have a problem. Now, there's a few mechanisms that occur. One is when you have acid reflux, you have hiatal hernia, you know you have pressure because there's something got to be squeezing that stomach and pushing it up to create reflux and to create hiatal hernia, which is where a bit of your stomach is going above your diaphragm. 95% of them are sliding hiatal hernias, meaning they move up, they go down, they move up, they go down, but it's still that pressure up that is not supposed to be there. And what happens with that is that that pressure causes impaired emptying of your stomach. So your stomach is supposed to receive food within 2 to 4 hours. It should empty it, and depending on what you ate. So the stomach churns the food around. You have a nice healthy dose of acid in that stomach. That's how you absorb your nutrients, and it's also how you kill bad bacteria. So let me mention as an aside, this study also found that people who were taking PPIs, proton pump inhibitor, acid reflux prevention medication, that was more correlated with having small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It only makes sense because your stomach acid is designed to kill bad organisms. So if you've lowered your stomach acid, then you're not going to be as effective at that. But even the PPIs aside, just that the pressure on the stomach is not allowing that motility or motion to occur at the correct speed. And so because of that, there's a stagnation and bacteria can happily multiply. So that's where you're getting this bacterial overgrowth in that upper small intestine, because the stomach has slowed, the upper small intestine has slowed. It's like a traffic jam. Everybody gets backed up. It starts at one place and it just, perpetuates. Okay. So then the species, it's not important that you know the name, is called Bacteroides. But what's interesting about it is that they're very highly adapted to prolonged nutrient exposure, meaning the stagnation in the stomach and small intestine. They're very adapted to bloom, as they said in the study. In other words, happily procreate because of this slowed motion. And then also what happens is you don't have, because of the slowed motility and the malabsorption, you run into issues with bad bacteria happily multiplying, but good bacteria are now getting more and more deficient. So they can't keep the bad guys in check, which is how we're designed. There's also a really interesting concept that's called an oxygen leak. And what happens here is that due to the reflux of the acid, there's inflammation in the lining of the stomach and especially the esophagus, and that irritation causes the cells to get not only inflamed, but they can start leaking oxygen. And what's interesting about that is that most of the organisms in your colon are what's called anaerobes, meaning they survive without oxygen because there's really no air coming into them, so it makes sense that they would have to be anaerobes. However, this species, Bacteroides, even though it's an anaerobe, it's also oxygen tolerant to a degree. So it makes sense, as this inflammation is occurring and some oxygen is leaking in, that it can still thrive. So point of interest on that. So what do we do about it? We have a sort of a catch-22 here of the fact that maybe you're on PPIs, or even if not, you have this slowed motion of food moving through your stomach, moving through your intestines. Bad bacteria are procreating. You get this small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. You're pretty miserable with the bloat and the belching, and food, your abdomen is distended. You have diarrhea or constipation. You've got brain fog, you're fatigued, you've got trouble sleeping. It's miserable, not to mention the downstream effects of malabsorption, like the rosacea and the osteoporosis. So it's a pretty miserable scene that's created here. And a lot of times, if you are diagnosed with it, they'll give you an antibiotic, which can kill off the particular bacteria. But remember, the acid reflux and the hiatal hernia is what is helping to create this again, because you've got the pressure, you've got the slowed motion through your stomach and small intestine. And so I've met so many patients over the years said, yeah, I got treated and I felt so much better, but it came back. I don't know. It just came back. It's like, how often can you keep taking drugs and antibiotics over and over again to treat this? Why? Of course, you should be asking why. Why is it coming back? What can I do about it? And so there is a whole protocol that we do. That's natural. So we don't tend to use the drug. We use antimicrobials, natural antimicrobials instead. So you want to identify the type of SIBO. As I said, there's methane gas, there's hydrogen gas. The hydrogen is more associated with the diarrhea, methane more with constipation. But if you could do the test, that's even better. You want to reduce the overgrowth with antimicrobials. There's oregano, there's garlic, berberine. Some patients we put on what's called an elemental diet. And this is kind of a liquid diet where things are already broken down. They're so that down to their very elements, hence the name. And so it's not allowing these bad bacteria, these Bacteroides, to eat as well. So you're killing them off and you're starving them at the same time. So it's a little bit more efficient that way. Not everybody has to go on the elemental diet. It depends on the severity of their problem, and it's not long-term. It's just a temporary measure. And then you've got to restore that motility, okay? And so ginger is good for that. Bitters are good for that. And also we have to handle the pressure. And that's coming from the dysbiosis, the bad bacteria, and also on a structural side, we work with the vagus nerve, we work with the diaphragm. So that's how we're starting to balance the hiatal hernia and the acid reflux. Then you're rebalancing the microbiome, and you have to do it in the right steps, because you don't want to start trying to rebalance good guys when you have these particular bad guys, because it's just putting the cart before the horse. So there's a whole stepwise fashion that we do, and then you've got to repair the lining of the gut, but also prevent recurrence. And that's what's really key to what we do is, do you have food sensitivities? Do you have certain lifestyle and diet habits that aren't good, as in a terrible diet, or you tend to always eat late at night and lie down, things like that can be easily corrected. But also, are there certain toxic exposures that need to be addressed, like mold or heavy metals? All of this has to be teased out so we can really resolve this problem and restore balance, so that we're not having this recur over and over again. So my summary of this is, it was a fascinating study that is showing this correlation true. But in addition to that, we want to make sure that if you have symptoms even of early acid reflux, you want to address it completely and not allow this progression to occur, because the acid reflux can become the hiatal hernia. Then you have the situation where you're likely to get SIBO. And as I said, this small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is affecting you across many different systems: your nervous system, your skin, your bones, not to mention your gut. So it's very pervasive, doesn't have to happen. If it does happen, there is a natural program to heal it. So I hope you found this helpful. And if you know anybody who's like this, that's suffering, share the video with them. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Please send me a comment. I love your comments. I answer pretty much every one that I get, and we'll talk soon.